Almost a year ago in one of my live videos, I went through some principles that can be applied to a person's finances and their goals in regard to their credit cards and their strategy for points and miles that would help a person be able to determine, am I going to be able to get maximum value out of multipliers, out of high-end cards, out of the credits that are available on those cards? Or would a better strategy for me be simply to go for more and more sign-up bonuses, to churn cards, to sign up for cards to get the bonus, do the minimum spend, and then when that card hits a year mark, to cancel that card and constantly be trying to get those sign-up bonuses? And I think that looks different for everybody because people who can do the cards with multipliers generally have a lot more spend and they can do both. Generally, people aren't doing one or the other when they're people who have a lot higher spend or a lot higher income. So I kind of put together these principles, and they're general principles about finances and about life that I think are applicable across the board and might help people determine, am I the person who, yes, will be doing sign-up bonuses, but also needs to care about the multipliers and the credits and all of that? Or am I in the situation where I'd just be better off narrowing in my strategy, constantly doing sign-up bonuses, churning and burning, so to speak, and moving on to the next card to get more and more points? So I'm going to pull this up right after the intro, and hopefully this material will be helpful to you. Thank you for being here. Please hit the like and subscribe button. So now we get to the centerpiece. I'm kind of getting known to be a person that has a lot of hot takes, and I think that this one's going to be one today. So be kind in your comments, but disagree if need be. However, I watch a lot, and before I ever got into doing a channel, I was consuming tons and tons and tons of credit card points and miles content on YouTube and other places. And I've been doing the points and miles thing for years. I mean, years and years myself, because I flew for work. So I had status and I was earning lots and lots of points with my credit cards. And so I had the Sapphire Reserve when it first came out, 9 years ago, and earned a lot of points there. I had the United Club card back when people didn't even know about those things. I mean, I've been doing this a long time, and I just see some trends. And for me, you notice I don't put, every now and again, but I don't put very many like referral things and things like that, because to me, this is my hobby and I love it. I think it's the greatest hobby in the world. And I want to really evaluate, because it's different for so many different people. And there's really not a one size fits all kind of staple advice that can be given. And so that's kind of what led me down this road of these thoughts. Points for everyday spending. So a lot that's discussed about credit cards in the points and miles game is what the great cent per point value is. And I focus on that a ton. I mean, like I just said, I have the City Prestige card. I don't ever want to get rid of it. I get 5 on dining. I get 5 on airfare. And then I use the custom cash to get 5 points per dollar on my gas and 5 points per dollar at home improvement stores. And then I try to use rotating categories on other cards. And I'm a maximizer. So I'm not trying to be hypocritical about this, but I have pretty high spend. And it's almost like there's a real push sometimes for these cards. This got the best multiplier. This got the best multiplier. And then sometimes it's marketed to folks who I wonder, how much spending do they have? Because, if you start to look at the math and break it down, when you're not spending a lot of money, 1% or 2% is not very much. And it's like, why should, if I wasn't a person who spent very much, why would I even care so much what the multipliers are? And that's kind of where this is coming from today. And so on this first slide, I have principle. And this is just a general principle, not so much about points and miles, but I'll show you how I think they're connected. Life is cheaper for those further along in life: the rich, the successful, the influential, and the disciplined. Now, think about that for a minute. Life is cheaper. It's actually cheaper when you have more money. And now, understand, I'm not meaning they have cheaper tastes. I mean, life may be more expensive when you have more money, success, influence, or discipline because you want to buy a Porsche instead of a Prius. Okay, I get that. I'm not meaning that. I'm meaning apples to apples. The same things are often less expensive for people who have more means or more background or more influence or whatever. They're farther along in life than they are for people who would kind of sometimes need it to be cheaper. Okay, case in point, if you were to go and you need to buy some furniture, if you have an 820 credit score and you walk in, they're going to shop different places, and you probably with that are going to be able to get 0% interest. But if you have a 450 or 500 or 6, I don't even know what the lowest credit score is, but if you have a really low credit score, you might have to go to one of those rent to own places, and you're going to pay super high interest, like 30, 40%. And then on top of that, you're going to pay an inflated price for the product. I mean, we understand that. You say, yeah, but that person has low credit. They're not a good credit risk. That's true. But the principle's still true. The person who probably has less disposable income is getting a way worse deal. That's just a principle. And so we see that all over. And I just put some examples here on the screen. Bank bonuses. You know, guys will advertise, hey, you really need to check out. I know there's RJ has that Run on the Bank channel. That's kind of fun. I don't do many of those, but I think it's kind of cool what he does. And bank bonuses, a lot of them are, yeah, you can get a $750 bank bonus with, I don't know, Capital One, whoever. But you often have to deposit $100,000. So guess what? People who have $100,000 can make money that people who don't have $100,000 can make. I mean, they just can't do it. So there is just kind of evidence of what we're talking about. Purchases with great credit. I mean, if you have great credit, you can get much lower interest. You just can. And that's a lot less expensive overall. Earned interest on purchases that could have been made with cash. What I mean by that is that, like, if you go to buy a car and you got $40,000 in your bank account to write a check for the car, and then they say, well, you know, we have financing 0% interest for 12 months. Well, most people who need to finance a car can't finance it for 12 months because they can't make a $4,000 a month payment. But if you got $40,000 in the bank, then you can make that. So you know what you can do? Yeah, I'll finance it for 12 months, 0% interest. You throw your $40,000 into a money market account or a high interest, and you're making money back and not costing you any more because you have $40,000 already. Cheaper services due to connections. Now, what I mean by that is that a person, that's why I included not just rich and successful, I said influential. Okay, I've been in some organizations before. So let's say that you're in the Civitan Club or the Kiwanis Club, or you're heavily involved in your church and maybe know a lot of people there or whatever it may be. You've got connections. And that means that when your air conditioner breaks, you may have somebody you know who owns an air conditioning company or somebody who does it on the side or whatever, and they'll come and do it, and they won't charge you the same because of your influence and your connections. What about bargains in exchange for promotions or goodwill? I've known people who have very successful businesses, and sometimes they get better deals on stuff because they just, whoever they're negotiating with, they just want to be good to them because they want to be thought well by this influential person in town, or they want to be promoted. You know, well, if I give him a good deal, he might send people to me for business as referrals, whatever it may be. Reduced interest on down payments and PMI. Did you know that doctors often don't have to have anything down and often get no PMI? So, you know, most of us, if we don't want to have to pay PMI, that's private mortgage insurance on a house, we have to put 20% down. Not certain professions. Certain professions get to put 0% down, get the lowest interest rate, and they get no PMI. Just because It says MD or whatever it may be at the end of their name. And so this is a basic principle. And I think it's observable everywhere that life is cheaper for those who actually could afford it anyway. And it's more expensive for people who need it more. And so we're talking rich, successful, influential, disciplined. Now, tell me what you think. Am I right about those things? Is that in general life? And I'm going to connect it to credit cards, I promise. But are those general principles correct? Do you see that in your life as well? Okay, so that moves me to the second principle that builds on that one. And that is that the same is true with credit cards. Okay, people with more resources can get farther with their credit cards. They just can do more with them. So high spending, and I just kind of mathed out some examples here. High spending equals high rewards. So let's imagine that a person only spends $500 a month on their credit cards, maybe a college student or somebody very, very early in life. $5,000 on their credit cards, and they get 2 points per dollar. Well, that's $120 a year. Now let's compare the person who spends $125,000 on their card at that same two points per dollar. That's $2,500 a year. And you say, yeah, but that's just basic, simple math. Okay, I agree. Spend more, you get more. It's still the same ratio. But now let's start breaking it down here. High earners, spenders, can redeem points for higher cent per point redemptions due to cash flow. Now, what I mean by that is that a person who's got the resources to spend $125,000 a year on their credit cards probably has the resources to, on some of their redemptions, just pay cash, oh, wow, that's a 1.2 cent per point redemption to fly Delta. I'll just pay for it. It's $500. Big deal. That's what a person would say that spends $125,000 on their credit cards. So that person, because of their resources, can cherry pick, can pick and choose what redemptions they want to redeem. So that same $125,000, if they're averaging 3 cents per point, and they probably can because you're going to have a lot more card options that you're using, at 3 cents per point, that's 375,000 points from their spending redeemed at 4 cents per point. So if they're only purchasing maybe really good hotel redemptions, and sometimes with Hyatt, you can get close to that. And if you do really high-end hotels, sometimes you can get close to that. But especially with airline miles, I mean, you can get 4 cents per point often on business and first class tickets. That 125,000 at 3 points per dollar and 4 cent per point redemption comes out to a $15,000 value. Well, what percentage is 15,000 of 125,000? You're getting a big percentage back, right? I mean, 12,500 would have been 10%. You're getting over 10% back on your spend in overall value. So the conclusion that I'm wanting to make on this is that card earnings only matter for higher spending, really. Now, think about that. And I'm not saying that people that don't have high spend shouldn't have credit cards. I'm not meaning that at all. Through discipline, I think they can do really well. But I mean, when we're constantly pushing, oh, look at this, look at this, look at this. Really, who is that really, at the end of the day, when you math it out, who does that matter for? Because, yeah, I've heard it said before, well, what's really the difference between people when they defend like the Chase Freedom Unlimited card? Well, it gets 1.5 points per dollar on every dollar spent. But, yes, others like the Blue Business Plus can get 2 points. But what's really the difference? Okay, I agree. But what's really the difference between 1.5 and 1? It's the same thing. So when you break it down, the earnings on the card, in other words, how many cents per point you're getting, they matter that much when you're not spending much. And the more and more you spend, the more it extrapolates out. So low spenders, this is the conclusion. They win through sign-up bonuses. They just do. I mean, low spenders, if they really want to beat the banks, how you do it is you sign up for cards, you keep them a year, cash out the points, sign up for cards, keep them a year, and so forth and so on. Because if you're only spending, all you're really going to have to spend for is just to get the minimum spend to get your bonuses. So what does it matter what the earnings on that card are if all you're spending is to get your bonuses? So I just find it as an interesting aspect of kind of the promotion of all of this. And so as we move on from this, what is the point I want to make? So the principle of this is redemption values matter more than earnings, especially for low spenders. Okay. So in this, the other thing about this that I've observed over and over is there's a lot of discussion in the space about, well, redemption values don't matter as much as earnings. And if you don't believe me, just listen to all the times people are like, and this is funny because it seems like a lot of folks in the space will say things like, just enjoy your experience. A cent per point doesn't matter, and so forth and so on. And they say a lot of people are always talking about cent per point. That's not what I find. I find that most people are saying cent per point doesn't matter. I mean, that seems like the consensus opinion. But when you do the math, cent per point matters. It matters really, from my estimation, really a lot more than how much you're earning on the card. Because look at this, $60,000. I just made up some numbers, did some math. At 2 cents per dollar spent, 2 points at least per dollar spent. That's 120,000 points per year at a 1.2 cent per point redemption. So that's transferring your points to Delta. Now, I tried to do some research. What transfer partner gets the most transfers from American Express? That information, as far as I can find, is not available anywhere. They don't release that. But if I had to bet, it's Delta. Because Delta, or maybe Hilton, or maybe, I don't know, one of their other partners that's very well, Marriott. I mean, because those are names people know, they're comfortable with. And a lot of people fly Delta, which I love Delta. I'm not dogging Delta, but we all know they have a low cent per point value as far as redemptions go. So that same 60,000 points at 2 points per dollar is 120,000 points at 1.2 cents per point, $1,440 in value. Okay. For 60,000 bucks, 1,440. But if you get a 5 cent per point redemption, which you can do through flying business and first class, I mean, it's not hard to get a 5 cent per point redemption if you are shopping and looking, and if you're flexible with your time. That's a $6,000 value. That's a big difference. Now, let's take that same $60,000 spent and say you can get four points per dollar. That's 240,000 points. Now, this is why I think this is really important. At a 1.2 cent per point redemption, you're only getting $2,880 value. That's less than half of what you would have got with less points earned. So we're saying that at 60,000 points, if you get a 5 cent per point redemption, $60,000 spent at only 2 points per dollar, you're getting double, as if you got double the amount of points per dollar, 4 points per dollar, and you still only got the 1 cent per point redemption. So which wins? Earnings or redeeming? You see, to beat the higher redemption, your earnings would almost have to be 9 cents per point if you're just cashing out your points for 1.2, just for Delta flights. So the question is, do redemption values matter? And I think this plays back into my previous assertion, and that is that you see people who spend more have more resources to be able to buy their cheap flights out of cash, or maybe buy their hotel rooms that are cheap out of cash and save their points, they're going to get a lot more value, because that cent per point really does matter in the math. I included this chart. I did a video a while back about my own evaluation, because I pretty much don't burn my points on anything except high redemptions. So if I'm going to fly and it's $300 and all I could get is a 1.5 cent per point, I just pay the $300. I mean, that's how I do it. So for me, the cent per point redemption is very much what matters more than anything else. And so what I did is I went through and I did it extensively. I studied, and I was even surprised where they came out. But I did a comparison of what my own cent per point value came out to for 8 different programs versus what the point guy says versus what Award Wallet says for business class value. And so at the bottom was United. And of course, points guy says 1.35, because if you just any flight you fly, that's what the average is going to be. But for me, it was 3.1, which is pretty good. Avianca, they say 1.4. I said 4.4. Air France, they said 1.3. I say 4.5. Air Canada, 4.6 for me. British Airways, 5.3. American, 6.2. Alaska, 7.1. Now, this is the one that's probably not on the list anymore, or at least way farther down. Virgin Atlantic, when I did it, was a crazy. And I mean, I did like, I don't know, dozens of flights, and it came out at 15.9 if you picked the ones that were good value. But they have, in the last week, they've changed their fees and stuff. So I don't even know where they'd be today. This is a little bit dated because of that. But you can see, if you're just using like that's why I just went all in on Alaska, because of that, because 7.1 as an average on their business and first class flights. So this is all to wrap up the idea of this centerpiece today, that you can get great value. But you got to kind of pick and choose. And that's really only going to work for people, as was pointed out in the comments. It's only going to work for people that have some discretionary funds for travel and can save their points for great redemptions.
Well, I hope this material was helpful to you today, and it helps you to determine, what kind of spender am I? What kind of stage of life am I in? And am I the kind of person who needs to worry about those multipliers and needs to worry about those high-end cards? Or should I just really zero myself in and focus on getting cards, meeting the minimum spend, canceling those cards, and moving on to the next card? Please consider my channel membership. It's RM Insiders. It's just $2.99 a month. You can cancel anytime. You get special videos I put out once a week for my channel members. Also, I do early release of most of my videos, so you get to see them first. And then I have a higher tier called Spreadsheet Warriors, and that gets everything from RM Insiders. Plus, we have live Zoom sessions at least once a month where you get to talk with me live over Zoom and the other Spreadsheet Warriors, bounce things off one another, really kind of put our heads together, talk about different strategies, and it's just a great community. So if you'd like to consider either of those, hit the join button or check out the link in the description below. Thank you for being here. Put your comments down below. Please hit the like and subscribe button, and I will see you here next time.